talk to you about is just like a little bit about what this machine is and what's going on here. So they're very similar with the standard and the bulky machine. This is your carriage, obviously. This is your sinker plate. Your brushes, if you're doing the weaving cast on, which I probably won't get to today. I don't know where your brushes are.
They're back here.
Oh, sorry. Do you have your screws too?
Yeah, there's somewhere back there.
Do you see
Are
them?
these
At least
little knobby
one.
things?
Yeah. So if you're putting your brushes on, so you'll see they're like positional. There's a left that goes like that, it goes pointed down, and the right that goes like that, and then your screws go right here. So I'll show you this again when we're doing the weaving. I don't think we're gonna get to it today, but the brushes are pointed like down towards your knitting. So right, left. If you have two R's or two L's, that's a problem. You need it to be one and the other. And the other difference is on a standard machine, you won't have this L right here button. You'll just have one button that says MC, and then up here it says NL. So what this is, just one thing, you want this to be like just like this. You don't want any of these buttons pushed in. These buttons are pushed in, you hit that and they come out. These are for doing different stitches with a punch card. So the punch card, this is all for punch card. We'll go over that when we do punch card. This is tuck stitch. This is multicolor lace carriage. This is part slip stitch. This is normal knitting. These two are for using the punch cards for the carriages. And then this one is carriage release. So the only time I would ever do carriage release is like if you're going like this and it gets stuck and you like can't go either way. One, everyone should do this. Like when you push your needles out, this is what's in working. You've got 4 positions here. They're like labeled differently depending on if you're on standard or bulky, but this back position that's written A here, that's non-working position. So it's like abbreviated NWP, non-working position. It means nothing will be knitting on these needles. Working position, regular working position is right here in this B position. That means this is like normal knitting, it's gonna look like this. Upper working, which is this D right here, is gonna look something like this when you're knitting with it. Usually what's happening here is you have a punch card and it's making a pattern. So there's like 2 different colors or whatever is happening, 2 different stitches are happening. You can manually do stuff with this too, but it means that all of these are gonna be knitted on. But normally, unless you're doing a pattern or something, they're gonna look like this. And then the very front one is hold position, which means if this is in normal knitting N, which is what it normally should be in, this is a big problem if that accidentally gets moved. If that's in normal knitting, it's gonna knit on this exactly the same as if it were back here. But sometimes it's hard to line that up exactly right there, so the best thing you can do is just push them all forward, go over it, and then it lines it up in regular knitting. That's the best way to start. If you push them all forward in the hold position and you're on hold, it won't push it back because what it's happening is it won't knit on these needles. So there's reasons to do this that we'll get over later. But you can have like part in working and part in hold, and what's gonna happen is it's gonna skip over all of these and only knit on those. So it'll only knit on what's in the regular working position. In the end though, it will treat both of these exactly the same and it'll put them all into working. So you wanna make sure, unless you're doing a hold pattern, which we won't do until a lot later, that you're on N here, you're on plain stitch, which you just hit that to get if any of these are pushed in. And you can do tuck one way and not the other way, that's why there's 2 buttons. And then this one you want on N. The only reason to put it on carriage release is, in my opinion, is if it gets stuck and you can't move it. My hands are really oily. Do you have a rag? Or just, yeah, can I just have like a cleanish rag? That's possible. Put it on carriage release and pull it. You can pull it straight off. But sometimes those needles will get stuck under here, so you kind of got to wiggle it. But it's really hard to put it on carriage release and just stick it on. The best thing to do is put it on N and then slide it on from the side. You're gonna get real good at like knowing when this slides on and what that sounds like and feels like, because it should slide like pretty smoothly. It shouldn't sound like it's scraping or hard. Sometimes when you put them in this track, it like it's just not quite right, and then it like it's hard to move. And then the other thing you're gonna get used to is like how quickly you go across this. You don't want to go super fast, but you also like you don't want to slow down because you're like scared and then stop. That will get jammed up. Like you have to go across like that. Like it's gotta be like not aggressive, but like a good speed, you know, but don't like jam it, don't break stuff. Like if it's, don't force it, but you gotta get like that. Like it's gotta be like a good speed. Your one arm will get like super toned, not the other one. Sometimes I switch. 'Cause it's like, it's awkward to do my left hand, but it's like your one arm gets tired. The other thing is I wish like if they were higher and you could stand, it would actually be easier than sitting sometimes. But anyway, so that's basically what's happening here. Questions so far about that? Good. Okay, so now we're ready to start knitting. So here, sometimes you'll see just like Japanese letters, it's the same thing. It's like there's A position, B position. That's for 2 different color yarns. Oh, do you have any clothespins?
I don't.
Okay, can you grab one from my, okay, clothespins are super important. It's like, you might want to borrow one for today because what it does is a couple things. One, it keeps the yarn from like flying up. The other one is it means I can put it in the carriage and it won't go through the bottom of the carriage. So they're important for lots of reasons. Weight is always going to be important on your machines. So this opens and closes. You want to open it to get into the A position. You slide it in. Sometimes you can feel it kind of like it has to go past like a metal part. So sometimes it like you can feel it kind of get in there, and then you close it. If you're putting a second yarn in, you'd put the one yarn in, close it. You put the second yarn in the B position like that. And these are free, like freely in here. It shouldn't be like rubbing up against anything. They're just freely in here. That would be, we'll go over that. That's fair. That's 2 colors. We're not gonna do that right now. But for most of what you're doing is one color. You gotta open it, make sure you close it. It's gonna be in regular knitting, plain, regular, normal knitting right here. And then we're ready to start knitting. So now you have all of these different options on how you're gonna put the yarn onto the machine and take it off of the machine. And it's different for different things, but first we just learn it and practice it, and then I'll kind of specifically tell you what you do them for. You can see on that sheet it says swatches 40 by 40 standard, 20 by 20 bulky. What I mean by that is this is your 0 line, this dotted line right here. If you have a standard machine, it will have a 0 on it, and then you're counting your needles out from there on both sides. So this is your 0 line. You always want to start with, like, especially if I'm doing 20 needles, that means I'm going to do 10 on one side, and then I'm going to do 10 on the other side. So now I have 20 needles, 10 and 10. Don't do 20 and 20, it would be huge. But this is like just a good size. What I mean by that is 20 by 20 means 20 needles by 20 rows. So when, oh, you need your row counter on. When you put your row counter on, you'll put it to 0, or wherever you want to start, but 0 is the best. And then you'll count, you know, however many rows. So if I'm doing 20 by 20 rows, right now we're just gonna practice today, so don't worry so much about the needles and the rows, but you know, it's something that you have to keep track of later. So that's what I mean by 20 by 20. It's 20 needles wide, 20 rows high. Okay, so to start a comb cast on, do you have a little comb? Like up here?
Yes.
Okay, it's really good for swatches to have a little one. So if you don't have a little one, then we'll probably need to try to find you one. I think everyone got one from upstairs last time. So I'm gonna need my little comb, and I'm gonna need my claw weights. Do you see another one in there somewhere? Thanks. Yep. Okay, careful, because like some people put stuff up here and then knock it off, so don't do that, because I have a bench, and it's like nice to have stuff sitting on the bench, or like if you've got a little box or something, because you're always wanting to like grab stuff, but it's like you can't see it when it's in here. Okay, so this is your needle pusher. So you use that ruler edge to do like all the needles. You use the comb edge to do every other needle. So when I'm doing the comb cast on, I want half of the needles in working, so I'm gonna push them all the way forward, and then half of them in non-working. So totally out, totally forward, just every other needle. And now I'm ready to go across it. So I can either leave them in here and then go across it, because it's gonna treat these just like they were back there. Other option is I go across it, line them up, and then go across it. Doesn't matter. The machine, it will treat it exactly the same. So I'm gonna go put this in here so that there's a little bit of a tail, so that my clothespin isn't like right up against the bottom of the sinker plate. And I'll just go across one time. And what it does is it hasn't knitted anything yet, because because knitting is like a loop. Right now, all it did was put one yarn on every other needle. So I have to engage all the rest of the needles for it to start knitting. So I'm going to put this comb on facing away from me. I'm gonna pull this one out a little bit, because if I just put it on like this, then it's gonna loop around all of those teeth. I wanna position this comb in the center, not like over on the side. I want this to be balanced. So I'm just gonna pull this one out, put this on like this, and then what I want to do is put my claw weights on the edge of where the knitting is. So the edge right here of the knitting, not the edge of this, but right here. And I want to make sure this is in front, right? But because I pulled this like this, look at what's happening to the sinker plate. I want to make sure that's gonna not be all caught up under there, so I'm just gonna pull that, make sure that's free. Put all of my needles back into working. So one of them, my 110 was all the way back there because I had to do every other one. That's correct. Now I'm gonna put them all into working. So now I have my 20, 10 on each side, and I'm ready to go with my second time. So you can see now I've actually not even fully knitted yet because I have a stitch here, but I don't have one here yet because it's just looped on, so I need to go over a third time in order to actually get stitches on everything. So now I do. Now I've got stitches on all my needles. So what is stitches? I'm gonna knit a little bit more. Oh, also your tension dial right here, this is important. If you're on you should keep it on like a low, or actually you should do it like on a higher one. For the standard, they generally like to be in like 6, 7, 8 kind of range. For the bulky, they generally like to be in like 2, 3, 4, 5, that kind of range. Don't go really little to like 0, 1, or you will jam up your carriage. And going big is not a problem, but don't go into these like little tiny ranges. And in fact, like when you guys are starting, start on a big stitch. So start 8 or 9. Sometimes on a bulky it's like huge, but you'll figure out where your dial likes to live. But start in the bigger range, because if you're in the like 3, 4, 5 right now, especially on a standard, you're not even gonna see your stitches. So now you just knit like back and forth like this. And what you're looking at is the purl side, P-U-R-L, which is the back side, and I'll show you when I take it off. The front side is what you're used to looking at. So like when you see these little V's, that's actually on this side. So when you're looking at this, you have to keep that in mind when you do patterns, because it all has to be reversed, because I'm not looking at the front, I'm looking at the back. Yeah, that's mistake number 1. Like I've done the whole thing backwards. But you can use the purl side as your front if you like it better or some like aesthetic reason. But generally, this is the back, this is the front. So you're looking at it backwards. And you're not seeing what you're doing. Like if you're doing a cable knit or something, you're not really seeing it until you take it off because it's on the front side. So just keep that in mind when you're working. So what you have here are stitches. Everything that's on a needle going straight down are stitches. Everything that's in between, this is called a gate post, everything that's in between the needles under the gate post that curves like down is a heel. So there'll be different times when you're picking up stitches and different times when you're picking up heels, which are in between the stitches, and you can't mix those up or else the whole thing will fall apart. So the stitches look like little hot air balloons, I think. And the purl side kind of looks like waves. So like the wave of the purl side, that's where your heels are. And these little like hot air balloons, those are your stitches. You can just follow one, especially when it's on a big gauge like this, you can just follow one straight down and see those are all my stitches. So I'm gonna have you guys try that and don't take it off. So I'll do a little bit at a time.